Bueno, me dicen que como ya tenemos aquí a nuestro invitado podemos comenzar. Antes de darle paso, me gustaría, pues, en primer lugar, agradecer al catedrático Silviu y Rogobete su participación en esta jornada. Es una persona con una amplia formación internacional, que no solo es catedrático en la Universidad del Oeste de Timisoara y director de su escuela de doctorado, sino que también cuenta con una carrera diplomática que le ha permitido, entre otras cuestiones, ser cónsul general de Rumanía en Sudáfrica. Por lo tanto, será un placer escucharle con toda su formación previa y sus publicaciones previas en el área de derechos humanos, filosofía. La presentación que nos trae hoy es sobre el ciudadano europeo y sobre cómo el ciudadano europeo maneja esas tensiones entre esa lealtad a su nacionalidad y esa lealtad a la Unión Europea. Tendrás unos 30 minutos para la presentación y luego pues dejaremos unos minutos para el debate. Muchas gracias por estar aquí con nosotros y cuando quieras puedes comenzar.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for a very generous introduction. I feel honored and I'm very glad that I understood 90% of what it was said, although I don't speak Spanish. But obviously referring to me and being about myself, I got maybe almost everything, 90% of the presentation, which was very honoring, and in a sense it raised the stakes a bit too high and the expectations a bit too high, but I hope I will be able to make a contribution to this extremely timely and important debate on European citizenship, European Union citizenship. Well, yes, I would like to address a few of the tensions between national and European allegiance or loyalty. I'll just give an outline. I'm not going to do everything that is on this outline. I'll go through just a few of the issues that are here with an introduction, and I would like to look a little bit at the question of citizenship, more from a theoretical but rather basic perspective, in order to clarify what is at stake when we talk about double citizenship. And then I'd like to look at some of the European Union national states' obligations towards citizens. And then I would like to revisit the question of citizenship and loyalty or allegiance. And for that matter, in terms of by way of introduction, I would like to point a few things that are perhaps common knowledge, but I would like to remind you about and remind ourselves about in the sense that it will hopefully clarify the complexity of the issue at stake when we discuss about European citizenship, European Union citizenship and national citizenship. And the first thing that we need to remember, to remind ourselves, is the fact that Europe is actually a very interesting concept. It's both an idea and an ongoing political institutional project, which complicates things tremendously, because it is something on the one hand that we know from and about since the very early stages of what we can call European culture and the roots of the European culture. The concept comes from Greek mythology, and it goes all the way back, and it travels with us along through history, along the way into which it led at a certain point to the building of an institutional project which is actually multi-layered, because when you talk about Europe as an idea, we will discuss a little bit about that. It's a complex concept that goes all the way back through history. When we talk about Europe as an institutional project, we must remind ourselves again that yes, we are members of the European Union, but this is not the only institutional project that runs under the label, under the umbrella of the idea of Europe. We have the Council of Europe, for that matter, which is a very, very strong and important institutional project, political project, that has a very, very powerful, significant role in building our identities. I can only point you to the European Court of Human Rights and to the fact that European citizens of states that are signatories of the European Convention of Human Rights or member of the Council of Europe are protected by a system of law that goes beyond the strengths and the powers of the national states from which they belong, to which they belong. Actually, in that respect, the European citizen or the citizen of a member state of the Council of Europe has equal value in terms of international jurisdiction with the state. At the same level, we are placed at the same level as subjects of law, as subjects of international law. So there are various political projects that are in a sense, competing for the idea of Europeanness and Europe. That's why I think we need to be clear with that in mind as well when we discuss about Europe. I will restrain my discussion on the European Union as a political project, as an institutional project, and I'll remind ourselves that it is actually a very unique project, and it's perhaps the first one in human history. There was never such an attempt to build a so-called coalition family of nations, of sovereign nations, under the umbrella of a very ambitious project that somehow intends to replicate a number of elements that are definitory towards questions of national identity. Because our discussion of European citizenship, European Union citizenship, from a very legal perspective, comes in a sense along the lines, sometimes in competition with, but sometimes complementary to what we all have as national citizenship identities. That's why it is a very ambitious project. It is a sexy project. It is a very attractive, I hope it still is a very attractive project for the very fact that it provides security, safetiness, space centered on human dignity. We all remember, particularly coming from the eastern side of Europe, from the former Eastern Bloc, how much we wanted to belong to this family of values and the family of countries. And accession processes are still ongoing. There are countries that aspire to become members of the European Union. Not to talk about the incredible pressures we have at the borders from migration side. We are a magnet. We are still here. We are still powerful. The European Union still has a power that is being seen and real. And it is normative power at the moment, and I think this needs to be kept. And it is that's what I want to address, the question of how can we strengthen this power? How can we make the European Union a stronger presence on the international arena? How can we build a citizenship that it's not only technical and not only based on possibilities to travel from one place to another or to be employed and everything that we are told, and there are very important elements of our citizenship as European Union citizens, but also build some sort of loyalty, deeper and deeper levels of loyalty, because my thesis is that unless there is trust built between the institutions and the citizens, there is no way to strengthen our entity, be it national or European Union entity, which is what we will see a competing in a sense, but also complementary reality as we are citizens with double citizenship. So my thesis is both the two sides, the state or the political entity, in this case Brussels and the European Union elites, and the citizens need to build trust in each other. And unless there is trust, there is no proper citizenship. So I'll just go for quite quickly through some of the some theoretical elements related to citizenship. Obviously, it's a 20 minutes address, maybe maximum 75 minutes address. I put my timer here, so it will let me know when I'm reaching the end. But basically, I cannot cover the whole thing, and I'm not looking too exhaustively on these issues. I'm just surfing the surface and picking up what I think is crucial in order to understand the tensions between loyalties or loyalties given towards our national identities, but also towards the newer identity which we are in a sense attending to, which is the European Union citizenship. So I'll just talk about citizenship, and from the very beginning, we need to clarify that citizenship it might be based on values. It might be based on ideals and ideas and identities. But at the end of the day, it is a legal term. It is a legal term defining, in legal terms, the relationship between an individual and a political actor. In our case, as we'll see, it's complicated because it's double, but it's a political actor. Let's call it state or political actor for the sake of theorizing, of working theoretically, in a sense, in abstract. So the citizen is legally bound to the state or to the political actor, usually through a social contract, through a legal system. And this legal contract, like any contracts, this social contract, like any contracts, it involves a two-way relationship, which is legally based somehow, but it must go and it will go. It always goes beyond legality and beyond legal issues, beyond the written contract, and it moves into a wider, larger contract, which is the social contract, which involves not only the legal system, but also allegiances, also various forms of expressing care from both sides. So what we have in a two-way relationship, what I mean by this is that on the one hand, the state or the political entity has obligations towards the individual. There are some obligations which are enshrined in the legal system, and basically they are to provide security, to provide empowerment to the citizens, and to provide a fair context to flourish or to pursue one's ideals, values, belief systems. Is to create a space in which people will feel secure, in which citizens will feel empowered, in which citizens will feel free to follow their ideals, their value systems. Now, as we'll see, the moment these things are touched, the problems are coming. So on the one hand, the state has obligations to provide these kind of elements. On the other hand, the citizen has to respond in a way or another. And that's why we talk about rights and obligations of the citizen, which are, again, legally enshrined, but also they can move beyond, and they must move beyond legal issues, not against legal issues, don't get me wrong, but beyond it, above it. There must be something more that involves the loyalty of the citizen in order to build a strong political entity. So basically, the individuals are bound or have rights and obligations. I mentioned they respect the rule of law, but then also show allegiance and trust. And we trust and allegiance contribute to the consolidation of the state. It is only through this response that we can close the circle, we can strengthen the political entity. The citizens will strengthen the political identity if they trust the political identity, because only if they trust it, they'll get involved, they'll share the burdens, and ultimately they'll sacrifice themselves. Can we talk about that? Obviously, we did talk in our national historical identity building narratives, and sometimes not only narratives, but also realities. We all have heroes in our nations. That is what total allegiance, the total loyalty means. It's all about. Is that the aim for the European Union? I don't know. Perhaps yes, it must be the higher the stakes, the better. But all I'm trying to say here is that the citizen must feel protected, empowered, and represented by the state. And if this is what the feeling is, and if this is what the reality is, then the citizen is ready to pay back, to contribute, to consolidate, to close the circle. And one thing that we need to keep from this is the fact that loyalty and allegiance is fundamentally and ultimately based on trust. And we need to remember this from both sides of the circle, being part of the political elite or being part of the citizens, and we are both sometimes we play both roles. Sometimes some of us will be both a political elite or decision maker and the citizen. So we need to remind ourselves that we need to create an environment in which both of us feel responsible, both sides feel responsible, but also both sides build trust in each other. Because when trust is weakened, allegiance is weakened, and in turn, the political entity, the state, is weakened. And here, the first little lesson we have also is that the less the state delivers its obligations, the weaker the allegiance of its citizen. It is a mathematical almost connection here. It's a very, very directly functional, very often, very rarely, if ever, a state that does not provide any of these important elements to the citizens will manage to harness proper commitment, proper loyalty from their citizens. And obviously that will mean the state, the entity, the political entity will weaken. Now, what is the problem with the EU and the national citizen? First, I wanted to call this the new kid in town. The EU citizen, it's a very, very, very young kid, very young kid. We're talking about 1992, the moment since we've started discussing and legally were given the opportunity to become members of citizens of the European Union. And again, difference, be careful, it's a different story, the idea of belonging to Europe or the idea of being a European to the idea of being a citizen of the European Union. This young kid, this young girl, it's caught between the EU and the nation state, and there are tensions. And there are tensions coming from two directions. From the two actors that are involved in this story. There are tensions between on the one hand, the deeply rooted values that the national states and their narratives have already had time to build towards leading towards a powerful, strong commitment, strong allegiance. That's why national identity is somehow so deeply rooted. That's why we see so many movements inside Europe on the radical side building on nationalism and national identity, but also far from the extreme in the middle. You also have a lot of commitment towards the nation state. It's simply a matter of maturity and age. It is a very old story. We are building on these narratives for years and years and years. What you can see is that there are tensions even between different sides of Europe, different parts of Europe. And I just point you to the Pew Research for the project and the statistics 2018, and you'll see the really somehow worrying divide between Eastern and Western countries, including inside the European Union, but also in the wider Europe as well, based on religion, on social values, acceptance of alterity. And we know the story, we know what we are talking here. So these are tensions rooted in terms of some sort of essentialist approach to citizenship and identity. But then there are also tensions between somehow the overlapping, I'd say both overlapping, competing, and sometimes contrasting responsibilities and obligations of, on the one hand, the nation states to which we pay allegiance as citizens, and the European Union political apparatus, the Brussels elites, towards the citizen also needs to pay allegiance and to give allegiance and to give some sort of loyalty, and to build loyalty if we are expecting to strengthen the union. So in this respect, we can talk about various ways in which the states follow a certain kind of policies, a certain kind of interest, a certain set of values. We live in democratic regimes in which political parties compete at national level, and we have various kinds of political emphasis and the strengths leading at one time, and those may be changing through democratic elections. We only have, let's think of Germany now, shifting somehow. We'll see what the implications are in terms of discourse at the level of national pursuing national interests. This is something absolutely natural, absolutely normal, and that's exactly what we celebrate, the variety of interests, which in a sense are somehow asking the citizen towards a certain set of loyalties, while the European Union at Brussels can be driven by different ideals, or not necessarily ideals, but different policies, according to the democratic moves that are shaping the political machinery of Brussels. So this can be competitive at some times, overlapping at others, but sometimes even contrasting. Brussels would want to do something that a national state would feel through its political leadership of that particular moment in time, would feel this, it goes very much against their interests. So the citizen is the same. The citizen is in the middle. The citizen is both European citizen, European Union citizen, and also national citizen. Where do we go? What I feel here is that, and I would like to point to the fact that let's look on the bright side and say the citizen is free to move between, like from the left to the right in its choices. I'm very happy that as a Romanian, I belong, for instance, to the European Union, and I have places to go if I feel that my government doesn't do what it's worthy, what it should do in terms of providing empowerment, belonging, safetyness. I have a place to go. And the other way around, somehow we need to be very careful. If Brussels does something that goes against those elements, the citizen will shift, will move towards the higher allegiance, towards the state, towards the national state, where the citizen feels more empowered, more belonging, and more protected. So these are inevitable tensions at the level of allegiance. Where do I go? Usually I go where I feel protected, where I feel at home, where I feel that I'm empowered. And that's, I think, the important lesson we have to learn from this thing is that if governments and political entities do not, and for that matter, the European Union apparatus does not fulfill its call, there are possibilities, and there are always movements from one place to another. The thing that we need to bear in mind is that tensions amplify, particularly when citizens feel threatened at their core system of values. We function in this way. It's our psychological, socio-psychological, and in a sense philosophical ways of perceiving our identities, that we cannot live in an environment that is not conducive to safetyness, not conducive to empowerment, and in an environment that makes us feel aliens, makes us feel that we don't belong. And that's why all these elements are related to a core system of values to which, if we feel we are attacking, then our trust decreases. And this decrease in trust, it's a very, very dangerous reality, particularly in our highly competitive, but I will also say highly conflictual international environment. It's not only competitive, but it is conflictual. We are aware that we are in a world in which there are powers that have different interests, and they follow different interests which come into conflict. And in that respect, we are all aware that the European Union is a growing power. It's a maturing, hopefully becoming more and more of an adult international competitor. And we are a target. As the European Union, we are a massive target for such hostile actors. And usually hostile actors, and this comes from security studies, usually they look for this kind of lack of trust. And when they see a crack in the trust between the citizen and the political entity, be it European Union, be it the national identity, they will use any means to crack it. There is any means to enter that crack, and that's if trust decreases, then there are various levels. You can be just simply disengaged. You can say, I don't care about this anymore. I don't want to go to elections. I don't care what's happening. They are the same people. They have their own agenda. We don't care. All the way to really the points of radicalization, which are very dangerous. And that's why hostile actors are active. It's not something that I need to convince you about. You are all, most of us are not only physical citizens, we are people living in cyberspace as well, like we are doing right now. We know our social media profiles, we know how our countries and our ideals and our allegiances are being continuously under attack and manipulation in order to do what? In order to break the trust we have in our political entities, in this case, concrete terms, in our national identity, but also in our European Union identity. And very often what happens, as we all know, is that such attacks from hostile actors work the two against each other, work the allegiance we have towards our national state against our allegiance we have towards the European Union, and the other way around. So it's basically a place in which there are major risks. The moment we accept being played on this key of cracking allegiance or building hatred and distrust towards one of the two elements that are given our citizenship, we are in a position of danger, and we are not only ourselves in danger, but we actually endanger our own political entities as such. So just to give an example, obviously I'm not attempting to talk about all the obligations that the two elements that constitute our or request our allegiance. That is something a totally different study. What I'm trying to do is just to give an example of, for instance, some obligations that both EU and national states should be careful in trying to provide. And I start from what are the expectations, for instance, by looking at what Europeans, your citizens, value. I just looked at the very recently, it was referred to today in the earlier interventions, the Eurobarometer run by the European Union on values and identities of the EU citizens. It's 2020, it's a very fresh study. And I picked up, you can pick up almost anything from that. It is a very thorough assessment, quantitative assessment of the question of values, identities, and EU citizenship. So a major resource for research, by the way. But basically, I just picked up what are the most important personal values for the EU citizens. What do they feel like they want to have? What do they value most? And what they don't value so much? And it is surprising in a sense, because as we can see here, a clear majority of EU citizens, basically I'm showing this in order to see, is the EU or the national state interested in providing these kind of things that will create an environment in which such personal values can flourish and people will feel protected and safe and flourishing and empowered if they feel that these kind of values are being protected by the political entities. A clear majority says that EU is interested in taking care of close ones. Be very careful, close ones can mean a lot. I mean, family, nation, clan, group, tribe in inverted commas, obviously. And being in charge of one's own life decisions, it's 78%, it's even higher. Freedom to decide for myself, freedom to choose what makes me happy, freedom to choose my ways of achieving fulfillment in life, because this is what is the definition of a secure life and of a fulfilled life. Feeling safe and secure, it's also very highly pointing. And then care for nature, environment, availability, worldwide equal opportunities. These are the top elements. And these are the things I would say a smart, intelligent political establishment will try to provide, being EU elite or being national states. What we are not so much interested in is, well, very interesting. I mean, we would expect that, oh, European Union is good for citizenship because we can become rich. It's not necessarily what people really want. We achieved as European Union a certain level of common sense, good standards of living. Telling others what to do is something we really don't need to hear. It's really, we don't need to know exactly. We're not interested. Ability to engage in all sorts of new experiences, it's somewhere there. The respondents say, okay. So these are the things what states should do, or entities, European Union elites should do, and what they shouldn't if they want to create and build trust and build allegiance at the end of the day, or allegiance and trust at the end of the day. And there is not much time left. I'll just say, let's take an example as a case study. I just gave a quote there, a Europe that comes to explain to people that what words they should or shouldn't say is not a Europe to which I totally adhere. Any take on who said this and when, and obviously we are here talking to inform people. I'm sure you've seen the discussion around this. So this does not come from some sort of nationalist anti-EU thinker, or my 30 minutes are up, or a radicalized anti-European person. It comes from, as I'm sure you know, from Emmanuel Macron, who very recently said this as a response to the attempt from one of the important elements of the Brussels elites, Brussels political power, the commissioner for Dali, the commissioner for equality in the Commission of the European Union, with that document that was supposed to be an internal document for giving some guidelines of dealings within the European Union machinery. I'm not saying anything about it in terms of value. I think it is a very, very good example of what can be done in ways in which perhaps to lead people towards lowering their level of allegiance instead of raising their level of allegiance towards the European Union as a political apparatus that requires our trust in order to be strong. So just to close, I jump over this side. That's what I planned anyway. I just have some quotes here that will perhaps I use as conclusions. Questions of identity is not something self-evident or related to our station in life, but an open-ended inquiry. And my invitation is, do go there, do go to inquire continuously. What is that makes me who I am? Question ourselves. Let's avoid the banality of evil by not questioning who am I. It's a fundamental question we need to address. In fact, our identity is deeper and more many-sided than any of our possible articulations of it. But then perhaps the funny one, I think, which it is a known, very known, well-used quote. Do not ask me who I am, and do not ask me to remain the same. Leave it to our bureaucrats and our police to see that our papers are in order. This is basically, I think, a very good lessons we can take from Michel Foucault. Political actors need to do just this. Leave us alone, in a sense. Make sure that we, the citizens, feel safe, feel empowered, and feel that we belong. The more this happens, the more citizens will be inclined to build allegiance, and thus to close the circle, providing the right and meaningful support, which at the end of the day will strengthen the political entity, which in turn, in a full circle, will strengthen our identities and our position in the world. Thank you very much.
Questions in the chat or in the room?
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes. There is a basic question about European values and European politics when it comes to countries where these values, these politics are not being kept, such as Poland and Hungary. What shall the European Commission, the Council of Europe, the European Parliament, the European institutions in general undertake in regard to these countries and their the non-democratic policies? Thank you.
Well, thank you for the question. It is a very difficult one in light of what I've just said. I think, first of all, the technical answer is that the European Commission already did take some very significant steps very recently. Almost as we talk, they blocked the access to the funds, to the major funds that are being provided for the members of the member states. It's just that two countries, Hungary and Poland, that did not receive yet the first installment. And I know Romania is not feeling very well. We've got the money, but there is still conditioned, it's still highly conditioned by various stakes that are being to be kept. But we've got it. So in terms of what is being done, it's already being done. I can say that there are already very concrete and very, very strong steps that are taken by the European Commission. On the other hand, I think that is one way of looking at it, and it's from more or less an institutionalized perspective. I would say the European Union should be more careful with finely tuned elements related to identity and allegiance, because again, what I said is it is a competition on who provides the safer place for people to follow their system of values. And unless there is dialogue, unless there is communication, unless there is education, unless there is a proper discussion on what are the values that are being at stake and why are they crucial, why are they important for one side or the other, I think we cannot reach any engagement, and we are jeopardizing the project. We are jeopardizing the identity, because exactly what I said, we are losing allegiance, we are losing people's trust, and that is at a very high cost. So I would suggest the Brussels elites should look into the details rather than just acting automatically in terms of, okay, this is our standard. Yeah, we do not want to lose our very powerful normative position. And I think that's crucial, but it has to be done in dialogue. It has to be done by questioning, by going back and forth, and perhaps, I don't know, I wish I would have the answer, but I would just say, be very careful both sides, both the national states and and Brussels, because the citizens now have the freedom, in a sense, to move from one place to another in terms of their allegiance.
Is there any other question? In that case, I will make one highly connected with the first one. You have said that the European Union needs to build trust on the institutions, but I guess that this is also a role of the national governments to build the narratives to support the European Union, because making the same across Europe, there are nations or countries with more trust of the EU and others where we have low. So my question will be, wouldn't some countries feel threatened by the European Union by having citizens trusting in the European Union so that they later on will claim them reforms? Thank you.
Well, thank you. We actually have a very, I would say, sad example, which in a sense weakened significantly both ourselves and the ones who decided that the European apparatus, the EU political establishment is too strong, and they left. It's Brexit, and I don't think that any of the two sides are feeling better today because of that. And it is a very good example of the ways in which such a hot issue was exploited by other competitors, if not enemies of the European Union. But again, we live in democratic regimes in which people are being elected through votes, to voting systems. And we, in a sense, need to be aware of the competing ideologies, in a sense, even if in this very finely tuned aspect of the narratives that are being provided by governments and narratives provided by the European Union and standards required by the European Union, and be aware that those people are in power because they are voted. They manage to win the allegiance of their citizens, so they're running those countries to the point in which some of them are becoming reluctant to European Union values. Then that must be discussed as such. I don't see any of the current leaders as being strongly somehow opposing the whole thing about the European Union, but it is a very difficult question. I just say, be careful. Both sides are in a competition, in a sense, for the allegiance of their citizens. At times, it can be complementary. I remember the days when, for instance, Hungary was trying to be a member of the European Union. It was the same leader who was one of the most ardent supporter of the EU integration. Things changed. I don't know. It's democracy, freedom. I think dialogue is perhaps one of the best way of obviously there are other means, education and so on, but even projects like this, I think, are very important in terms of knowing each other, in terms of understanding East and West, in terms of understanding various mentalities, and somehow building trust. I return to my key point of my intervention: building trust in each other, trust in our nation's, trust from the nation side on the European Union. I know I'm a political animal now and diplomat, and I'm not answering exactly what you're expecting, because it is a very difficult question. I think it should be addressed by those directly involved.